What's the secret of that?
You find your passion.
That's a trigger.
And you go through that journey. 60 minutes later, you've got this bit of magic. Also, it's an incredible passion.
Tell me something. Where does that passion come from in you? And tell me, if people think they don't have it, do they have it? How can they find it? And how do you keep it?
But tap dancing to work, Warren, how can other people tap dance to work? What's the secret of that?
You find your passion. You find your passion. I was very, very lucky to find it, when I was 7 or 8 years old, and fortunately, my children have found their passion. One son loves farming like nothing else. One son loves music like everything else, and all three of them love philanthropy and what they get to do. You're lucky in life when you find it, and you can't guarantee you're going to find it in your first job out. But I always tell the college students that come out, I say, take the job that you would take if you were independently wealthy. You're going to do well at it.
Well, now that we can see how short life really can be, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? That's a trigger. That's the biggest trigger that I have ever experienced. What are you going to do the rest of your life? And what I had to do is I had to start taking some of my own advice. I have been telling people, I had written about it for a very long time, that if you're doing something that you're not totally committed to, if you're doing something that you're not totally passionate about, you're compromising yourself every day.
I always think about food everywhere I go. So when I'm training, I'm never very far away from food. I had that extraordinary moment at the start of Kona 2 years ago where I was paddling at sort of 5:30 in the morning, waiting for that amazing cannon to go off. To get rid of the nerves, I just started thinking about recipes and dishes and how do I get through this 3.8K swim. You work 14, 15 hours a day to perfect an absolute stunning dish. It disappears in 2.5 minutes. And that's what I said. It loses you. You get on that journey and nothing else matters except what you put on the plate. Because you start off with this raw ingredient and you go through that journey. 60 minutes later, you've got this bit of magic. Also, it's an incredible passion. It is a huge canvas. Food was my calling, I think, because that was the way I could sort of disappear, travel, learn, and get really excited about something. And my first dream was to go to France, to understand why were they the sort of foundation of cooking? Why did they start it? How did they start it? And I disappeared. I became French. And within 18 months, I was fluent in the language, I was holding my own in a foreign kitchen, and I was seriously cooking my arse off. My first set of knives was bought by a charity because my parents couldn't afford to send me to cooking school. And this knife wallet was a swimbo with bright yellow handles, and trust me, they couldn't cut butter, but they looked the part. My mum had a tear in her eye because she was upset she couldn't afford it. My first set of whites and my first set of knives, I've still got them. Food, you're on a journey. And there's something quite amazing about the way you cook, of giving pleasure. My dream when I started out as a chef was to discover every ingredient and never be intimidated and not knowing what to do with it to that level of perfection. I think I'm about 97% of the way there. There must be about 3 or 4% of ingredients that I still haven't discovered yet. And that's the exciting thing about food. That is what I call my specialized tuna niçoise. Delicious.
Cuban, the billionaire owner of the Dallas Mavericks, who started out in business at the age of 12 selling garbage sacks because his dad wouldn't give him a pair of sneakers. He went around and founded a company called Broadcast.com that after 5 years he sold for $5.9 billion to Yahoo. Then he turned around and paid $285 million for the Dallas Mavericks and turned a losing team into the 2011 NBA champs. Not bad. Mark Cuban joins me right now. Hey, Mark.
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you. I see you noticed the ring.
That is a beautiful ring.
This is some Coach Carlisle gave you that because I'd helped him work with your team that year.
I get chills every time I see it. It's just
so
crazy.
Big, you can't wear the darn thing.
I know, I can't wear it at all.
Tell me something. You are been described a lot of different ways. I've wanted to meet you for a long time. Passionate, outrageous, playful. You've taken business and turned business into a sport. Yep. Incredibly successful. I think hunger is the strongest and most important element to success in anybody I've ever met. And you seem to have this insatiable hunger and passion. Now, I'm a passionate guy, but I don't have $2 million worth of fines for the NBA referees, right? But tell me something. Where does that passion come from in you? And tell me, if people think they don't have it, do they have it? How can they find it? And how do you keep it?
You know, that's a great question, because I don't know if I'm wired that way. I kind of feel like I am, but I'm just the most competitive guy that you'll ever meet. To me, like you were saying, business is a sport, and I just have always got to be competing. I've got to always try to win. And I wasn't good enough at athletics, but when I got into business, I realized that I wasn't just competing against an opponent for 48 minutes in a game or 60 minutes. You're competing against everybody who ever might compete with you, and that just keeps me going.
That's the whole world.
That's the whole world, right? And there's always some 18-year-old kid trying to come in and kick your butt. And to me, that keeps me young, that keeps me motivated, that keeps me hungry, because I never want to get kicked off that perch.
Do you agree that hunger is the most important element? I'm curious, or do you disagree? I see people very smart, very educated, but they're not hungry, and they never maximize their abilities. What do you think?
I think it's effort. So if hunger creates effort, then yes, absolutely, it's about hunger. Because I think so many people always talk about their dreams. You know, I think the biggest lie in all of business, if you will, or all of mentoring is follow your dreams. Because if you think about it, we all have dreams. You know, I started off wanting to be a baseball player. Then I dreamed of this, I dreamed of that, right? And then you realize that where you should go is where your effort takes you. You find yourself, I practiced baseball and basketball and loved it, but then I found myself spending more time with business and learning about business and running business or being involved with business. It was really my effort that drove me. So I always tell people, don't follow your dreams, follow your effort. Where are you willing to put in the time? Where are you hungry enough to put in the time? Because that's where you'll get results.
What about timing? You know, so often in life you see really good people who fail, and I find it's not because they didn't try or they didn't have the effort. They did the right thing at the wrong time.
No question.
You know, you look around, you see people buying a house for 100 years, right thing to do, roughly. You know, 2007, wrong time. You're down 30, 60%.
I bought houses at the worst time. But you're right. Timing, in a lot of respect, timing is relative to scale.
Yes.
So when I started my first business, I had just gotten fired from a job, and I didn't have a choice, and I went the next 7 years without a vacation, sold the company for $6 million. Yes. So I was 29, and I was retired, bought a lifetime pass in American Airlines, and, you know, I was great.
Did you just go party?
Like a madman.
I can see you doing that, Martin. That would not be difficult for you.
Not at all, man. It's in my nature. So I went nuts, right? And so I wasn't in a position to buy a sports team. I wasn't in a position to change the world, but I was comfortable, and if I was willing to live like a student, I was set for life. Right. But then my next business came along, and it happened to be, we started the business of streaming.
Yes.
And this is 1995, which is right when internet stocks started going nuts. And there's no question that had my next business not happened when the whole internet bubble had come along, I wouldn't be worth billions of dollars.
What was your company worth? What were the revenues of your company when you sold it for $5.9 billion?
Well, we were doing about 20, well, the last public quarter I think was 13 million, then 18 million, then I think our last one after we sold was 25 million for the quarter and break even.
Wow, and that's just revenue.
Yeah, that's just revenue. But you got to realize it wasn't 5.9 in cash, right?
I want to get to that because, you know, a lot of people have said, well, a guy like Mark, he's so lucky, and I hate when I see that. Sometimes people are lucky.
Oh, I am lucky. I'm the first to tell you I'm lucky.
But you got out of that Yahoo stock before it went down also.
Yeah, I didn't say I was stupid.
But I'm just saying, you've seen, you know, can you make your own luck by putting yourself in the right position? Because I think a lot of people see themselves as, you know, the season hits me, rather than saying, look, I got to look at what season we're in and say, how do I take advantage of winter? Have you done that throughout your life? You know, you're one of the first HDNet guys. You seem to always say, where's the next edge I can be on? So if I win big.
I always try to change the game, right? Because there's just starting and running a business, and then I sit there and I say, okay, look, I'm not the best programmer, I'm not the most technical guys, but with sales ability, with business ability, and with technical ability, then I can walk in and I can say, what can I do to change? So whether creating the first high-definition television network, HDNet, in 2001, in 2006, we sat down, we have a company, Magnolia Pictures, that's the distribution company. And we said, oh, look, this model is not working. Spending all this money to promote a movie and then just, you know, praying that people show up is a bad model. So I looked at the technology of television and said that video on demand on TV is going to explode. And so we said, let's take the movies we're distributing and put them on VOD where people can make an impulse buy just with their remote control and buy our movies first. Then, because we own Landmark Theaters, then put them in theaters. And so we went from a company losing money to a company that never lost money on a movie, or rarely lost, and always made money as a company. And now everybody's trying to copy us. And so that's what I try to look for.
It's amazing. You're always finding that competitive edge. One of the competitive edges you've done with Mavericks as you took the team that had been in one playoff in 20 years?
Yeah, we got voted the worst professional sports franchise of the 90s for the decade before I bought them.
So now, a year later, you get them in the playoffs.
Yep.
You know, 6 years later, I was there in Dallas, and my buddy Pat Riley was there and rooting against you.
Yeah, he was a happier guy than I was then.
But then 2011, you become champions. That kind of turnaround doesn't just happen.
Right.
You brought an innovative leadership, and you brought leaders into the group.
Yep.
I think you and I both agree leadership is the cutting edge. We're about to decide who our leader is going to be for the next 4 years. Yep. So you look under a John Wooden, you and I both know he had different players, and he won 10 out of 12 championships,
Incredible.
7 in a row.
Yep.
How valuable is the coach or leader? And I guess here's the real question. What is the most important qualities in a leader today? How do you know if they got the right stuff? And how do you know whether you let them go at a tough time or will you stay with them?
It's always really tough with coaches, right? Like they always tell you, coaches are hired to be fired.
Yes.
And with Rick Carlisle, our mutual friend and our coach, one of the Rick's strengths, and I think this is critical, particularly in sports leadership, you not only have to know what you're good at, you have to know what you're not good at.
Yes.
And that's one of Rick's incredible strengths. He doesn't try to tell you or mislead you or sell you on what he's not. He says, here's what I'm great at, here's what I'm not so good. And he'll say, look, if you can provide me support for those not so good things, I'm going to take advantage of it. And that's my job in my leadership role to say, how can I put everybody in a position to succeed so we can get a few more of these, you know?
How do you keep that hunger alive? A lot of teams, you know, the guys like, the Bulls back in the days of Jordan, three-peating, they never lost that hunger edge. How do you do that? Because once guys get it.
That part's not hard because once you taste it, I mean, you just got to go back for more. You know, it's that great tasting champagne. You know, it's like you don't want or steak. Yes. No one ever just has one steak. You know, you always want to go back and get more.
Back. Tell me, you've been, one of the reasons I wanted you on the show is because we have some people here that are more Republican-oriented. You've been Democratic and Republican. I've seen you ripping up both sides.
Both sides.
I like that recently you were talking about the blog about the Republicans saying we're not better off than 4 years ago. Address that. Are we better off?
Yes.
Are we the same? Where are we?
Individually, it just depends on your own personal circumstances that you may or may not be better off. As a country, if you go back 4 years ago, you know, here we are in September. September 2008, where 4 or 5 are the biggest one-day drops in the Dow. Mm-hmm. When you're watching the stock market go up and down like a yo, trillions of dollars, you know, people have no certainty whatsoever. At the same time, we're sitting there talking about being in the throes of the Great Recession. And not only were we in the throes of a Great Recession, but we didn't know if we were leading towards a depression.
Right.
We didn't know what was going to happen with banks. We certainly didn't know what was going to happen with housing.
Right.
Complete uncertainty. And so, you know, today we're worried about the fiscal cliff. Back then, we had no certainty on our whole financial system. The fact that we got through that uncertainty speaks volumes that we're far better off today than we were back then.
When we come back, I'd like to ask you about President Obama, and I'd like to ask you about Mitt Romney, and get a clear idea of where you think this country needs to go. What does the leadership need to provide, whoever we pick, for things to really begin to prosper going forward?
Very cool.
And the celebration will begin. The Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. The first title in franchise history.
Come here, Jet! Come here, Jet! Come here, Jet!
Tell me something. Look, I can see the look in your eyes. It's like it was yesterday.
Get emotional.
You were telling me during the break. What would you say about the ring?
Well, my ring, I can't have it out where I can see it because I just get so fired up and like so crazy. Like, let's go, and I have to like go look. I'm like, no, I gotta go play with my kids and I gotta chill. So I keep it where I can't see it.
What did it mean to you to create that victory with the team after a little less than 10 years, a little more than 10 years, I guess?
You know, it's hard to describe. It was just, I was happy for Dirk. I was happy for all of our players. I was happy for our fans. And it's almost more of a relief than anything else, you know.
Yeah.
You saw in the video that you could just see me screaming, and that was 67 days, right there. 67 days, the whole playoffs, of me saying, okay, don't even think about it. Don't even think, don't jinx us, don't jinx us. And then it was there. You see me right here just screaming and letting it all out, just that release.
You have a hard time expressing your true emotions, don't you?
Yeah, so hard, yeah. Take after my dad.
My kids take their friends to the movie and they go, watch my dad watch this movie. I the same thing. That's why I wanted to meet you. Let's talk about leadership once again. Let's talk about the president and Mitt Romney. Tell me, first of all, rather than the people, what are the qualities we need in a leader today dealing with the level of, volatility that we have in markets today, the challenges we're seeing overseas in Europe, even, Asia, potentially China slowing down? What do we need in a great leader? And then give me your report card for President Obama, because I know you're a big supporter of his, and what would your report card be for what you think Mitt Romney could do?
Well, first of all, I'm not a big supporter of anybody, right?
Okay.
I try to be very objective and just make a common sense decision based off the information in front of me, right?
Even better.
But in terms of leadership, first, I don't think the president has as much influence, particularly on the economy. Global affairs, absolutely, right? But on the economy,
I agree with you.
Nearly as much as people seem to think. To say whether it was President Bush before him or President Obama now, if you would only do A, B, or C, everything would be different.
Or even President Clinton, who was a dear friend, you know, how things go is,
well, yeah, look,
a lot of it is outside the control of the president.
Right, if the internet hadn't happened for President Clinton, he doesn't have a surplus,
yes.
right? So
yes.
I don't think you can put as much credit or blame on any presidential candidate. So that's part of it. But the thing that's changed, and it's a concern on both sides, is leadership has to come in terms of managing your party, because you're not voting for an individual anymore. You're not even voting for a ticket. You're voting for a whole party, because you look at the Tea Party and the influence, you look at the far left and the influence, it's the same on both sides, and there's so much money involved right now that you can't just say, okay, President Obama, this is what I like or don't like, or Governor Romney, this is what I don't like.
So how would you rate the parties?
They both scare the hell out of me. They really, really do. And I think a lot of it comes down to the devil I know is better than the devil I don't know. You know, because when you look and you try to go through the decision process, and I'll leave it wide open until the debates, right? Because I'm going to have an open mind until we go through the debates. You know, we've both been in business scenarios where someone comes in and we're looking to hire them, and we say, okay, what are you going to do to increase profits of this company?
Right.
And you sit there and they go, well, I'm going to increase sales. Well, that's not enough detail. What else are you going to do? I'm going to cut costs. That's not enough detail. What else? That's what we're hearing from the Republicans and Governor Romney. You've got to give me detail. You can't, he talks about being a business person. He would not hire anybody who came in auditioning for a job the way he is auditioning for a job. You know, now on the other hand, you look at Obama and you say, well, what have you done? Are you better off? Or, you know, and we're voting as individuals, so that's important. But at the same time, I don't know that he could have done a whole lot any different, or the Republicans would have done it any different. Now, if we go forward, again, I know Obama, and I have a sense, know him in the sense of just as a voter, right? Not personally, but just as a voter, and I have a sense for what he's going to do. It's like any other ongoing business. I'm not going to make somebody that I don't really know, who's not really being forthcoming, who's not giving me details. I'm not going to hire him as a CEO of one of my companies, because we've all been at, you know, okay, business isn't perfect. Right? But I'm not willing to take a chance on somebody new.
You want the certainty, so you can run your business and run your life, basically.
And I think there's
and
more
you feel
certainty.
There's more proven certainty.
There's more, because if Governor Romney comes in and just cuts taxes, that's not good, right? And he says...
Well, you've talked about that. You're more than willing to pay more taxes.
I'm more than happy to pay more taxes.
I am too. I saw the president myself. I spent a half hour with him about 3 or 4 weeks ago. But I asked him a question. I said, how will things be different 4 years from now when there's such demonization on both sides? You know, things have been so locked up. I heard his answer. I'm curious, as a businessman, how do we, you know, if you've got both sides so locked up, if they can't pass anything, aren't willing to pass anything, what will change? Or do you like that? Do you like the stability of keeping it the way it is?
There's something to be said for that, right? But, you know, I'd like to see the deficit reduced. I'd like to see all the things everybody is talking about. What it really comes down to is individual responsibilities from people in the business community. You know, the Republicans like to talk about taking the government out. I would love to take the government out, but we're
just not realistic.
Yeah, we're in a situation where, you know, it's 3rd and 50 to go, and I don't care if you're a running team, you still have to pass the ball. And where we are right now, I want to know what's going to happen from the Republicans before I'd even consider. Yet, with what Obama is doing, I have enough certainty that I feel comfortable with what's going on, and I can run my business.
So, you know, what you're saying is CEOs and those who are successful have got to take responsibility of coming up with a plan, not just look at politicians to do it. And we can't be irresponsible and just say, we'll cut our taxes without knowing what the consequences are.
You can't just take the government out and just say, okay, now what? And push it off to somebody else. CEOs, people who run businesses have got to take the responsibility to say, look, I'm a citizen too. My employees are shareholders of this entire country. I need to step up and hire people. I need to step up and do things for this country. Otherwise, I can't ask the government to do less. I'm not taking any of the responsibility away from them.
And you're willing to do that?
Oh, I always do. I'm investing in companies every day.
Why don't you run? You've done every damn thing else.
That's the problem.